Hello again, everybody, and welcome into the Take the North podcast, along with my main man, Dan Wiederer of The Athletic and frequent contributor to The Score. I am Mark Grote of 104.3 The Score, the Rahimi, Harris, and Grote show as well. And here we are. It is the week of the draft. As we are recording it, it is the Monday of the week. The Thursday of the week is when round one will occur in this year's draft. And this is a very special show, and we should let people in on the conversation we were having, Dan, right before we came on the air. And that is, is this a draft bonanza show? Is this a draft extravaganza show? Because I've got some things in my contract that don't necessarily do extravaganzas.
Oh, you don't do extravaganza, so you're lucky because this is a bonanza.
Okay.
It was a bonanza in 2025. It's going to remain a bonanza in 2026. We will see if we exercise the third-year option on the bonanza for 2027. We can figure out what that looks like in the contract and go from there. And I reminded you that we did both a pre-draft and a post-draft bonanza last year. And so we'll figure out if we've got the plans and the material to come back next week after all the picks are made and just let it all loose like a fire hose at our audience, just so they can join in on all of the intel and insight that we've collected.
We're going to bonanza the hell out of you. That's what we're going to do. We're going to get right to it because this will be probably one of our lengthier episodes, depending on how fast we get through all of it. And we have 20 things that you need to know about the Chicago Bears and this week's NFL draft. And I guess we should just start with the basics for this draft to let people know. And I'm sure that people who follow this podcast and who are following the draft, you probably have a pretty good idea of where the Bears pick, but let's just rattle them off. Here is what's going down for the Bears this year. In the first round, they will have the 25th pick, about which we have all talked a lot. They have 2 second-round picks, number 57 overall and number 60 overall. There's a third-round pick, number 89, Ditka. There is a fourth-round pick, 129. I don't know any Bears that wore the jersey 129. And then there are 2 seventh-round picks, number 239 overall and number 241 overall. And that just reminds me of Arlington Hambright and Lachavious Pig Simmons right off the bat.
That's the part of the draft, right? It's late on Saturday evening and you're thumbing through whatever websites you can find to get intel on these guys you've never heard of before and may never hear from again. What's most interesting to me about that, first of all, I love the bonanza episode because we go fast paced. We're gonna go bang, 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 bang.
Right.
We're gonna go right
into it.
But the biggest thing that stands out about those picks you rattled off is this giant gap, 110 pick gap between when they pick in the fourth round until they pick in the seventh round. It'll be very interesting to see if Ryan Poles is comfortable with that or if he decides to move around the board a little bit to try to fill in that space.
Right. And as we talked about on our live show, it's been a while since the Bears have been picked so low in the first round as opposed to previous years, just rattling them off really quickly again. Last year, the Bears chose 10th and they get Colston Loveland. 2024, we all know that was Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, 1 and 9. In 2023, Darnell Wright, a guy we should talk about on this podcast too, by the way. In 2022, that was the year of Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker. 2021 was Justin Fields at number 11. 2020, you had no first. You had Cole Kmet and Jalen Johnson. 2019, you had David Montgomery in the third round. 2018, Roquan Smith in the first round. 2017, Mitch Trubisky. 2016, Leonard Floyd, number 9 overall. 2015, Kevin White, number 7 overall. And I only went back to 2014 and Kyle Fuller, who was the Bears' first-round pick in the year 2024. So I wanted to make sure I got that.
And don't forget, Kyle Fuller, 1 pick after Aaron Donald went, and the Bears were heavily interested in Aaron Donald at the time, and they had them plucked right out from underneath them. At that point, you did name 3 years there where the Bears did not have first-round picks because of the trades for Khalil Mack and Justin Fields. They do have a first-round pick. It's just later than it normally is this year.
Yeah. More on that coming up. All right, you're good at this next question that we're going to ask because you've been doing it longer, and I don't try to calculate these things, but I'm glad that you did because I think it is important. It's really pertinent, actually, for your sake, for my sake, and I think for people who view the draft. Dan, when will the Bears actually pick? What time? What day? What's going to happen? Give us your calculations because I know you've been calculating away.
Background. The reason I calculated away for most of my career is because I worked at newspapers, which had deadlines on Thursday night. And so you had to figure out, okay, how much time am I going to have to actually write a story after the Bears make a pick before my deadline comes up? So it became a science, a formula to find out when exactly on the clock do the Bears go on the clock. Well, we've got a little twist this year. Number one, I'm no longer working for newspapers specifically. I've got a website deadline, no real deadline on Thursday night. That's great for me. Bad for me is the NFL. Well, it's also good for me. They changed the time limit between picks in round one from 10 minutes to 8. It should be a faster moving draft, but it also means that using past drafts as a barometer of where the Bears will pick on Thursday night is a little bit more of a guessing game than I'd like it to be. So here's what I've got for you, Mark Grote.
Yes, sir.
I think they're going to be picking a couple minutes before or a couple minutes after 10 o'clock on Thursday night. Okay. That's where they would normally pick if we were using the 10-minute line. I'm guessing right now, if you're setting your alarm on your iPhone, 9:30. Set it, 9:30 Thursday night. And then I'm going to give you picks on Friday night for the second round picks. I'm going to give you 7:58 and 8:12, and then a 9:37 estimated time for the 89th pick in round 3. I'm going real exact with my guesses. Put those alarms in your phone and understand what's coming.
I love it. I love it. That's a good guide. And that, have you gone back? Do you check your work? Like, what is your accuracy rate or hit rate been in the past? Have you been pretty close?
It's all over it. It's all over it. And that's why this change in the time limit between picks is going to really screw with this for a couple years, because there's going to be a little bit of vacillation, is what they like to call it, when the picks move around a little bit.
All right. So there it is. Let's get on to number 3, pertinent questions, things you need to know here in our Draft Bonanza program on the Mighty Take the North podcast. Dan Wiederer and Mark Grote coming at you. Before the Bears pick, the top 5 prospects you'd love the Bears to have that they'll never have a chance to get. What are you thinking with this question, Dan?
Yeah, it's like you're sitting at that club and you don't have access behind the velvet ropes to the VIP room, right? So you've got to sit and watch while other people have their fun. You tell me who you like out of this crew, because these are all players that would really make a big difference for the Bears. You've got Ruben Bain. You've got David Bailey. These are 2 big-time edge rushers that can help your football team in a major way. Bears are not going to have a shot at either one of those. You have Sonny Styles. Okay. Mm-hmm. Sonny Styles is an Urlacher type safety converted into a linebacker who's got a lot of range, a lot of skills, a lot of versatility that can help you. You've got Jeremiah Love, the all-everything back from Notre Dame, who's drawing comparisons to Saquon Barkley and Bijan Robinson as a running back who's going to go much higher than running backs normally go. You got Caleb Downs. You've got the safety out of Ohio State who can do a lot for you. Of that menu, which guy, if you were given unlimited access behind those ropes, Grote, would you put in your party bus to take home with you?
I would go, if I had to take one out of that crew, and I'm glad we're talking about this because we didn't get to do kind of our favorite players on the Take the North Live episode that we did in our Blue Cross Blue Shield studios. The top guy on my list, and I guess I was kind of Johnny come lately to him, but I watched him play in the football playoffs, and this team happened to go all the way to the national championship game, and that was Miami's Ruben Bain Jr. I just think he's an absolute badass who can get to the quarterback. I know there's some criticisms with him, but arm length and whatnot. But I like the motor with which that guy plays, the skill with which that guy plays, and I love the name Ruben Bain. It just that is a strong football name right there. So that's my guy. Who's your guy?
I think David Bailey is the can't miss guy in terms of the edge rushers in this draft. That whoever gets him on Thursday night is never going to regret it. Very polished. Described as having elite juice. You know, that resonates with me every time somebody is described as having elite juice. A very safe pick with a lot of proven production and then some upside to go with it. So Texas Tech's David Bailey is the guy that if the Bears could really just put him and pluck him and put him in their defensive line rotation, they'd be very happy. Unfortunately, they're not going to have that luxury. And so they're going to have to sit there. We're estimating about 2.5 hours that they're going to have to sit and be spectators in this draft. And that first hours might be the toughest because there's going to be some really good football players that they don't have access to.
Yeah, and it looks like on a lot of the mock drafts I've seen, Ruben Bain Jr. pretty popular mock to the Washington Commanders. Saints seem to have a lot of momentum towards David Bailey, as you mentioned, your guy, the Texas Tech edge rusher as well. Things can obviously change. Nobody really knows anything, but there has been a trend in that. Caleb Downs out of Ohio State, popular with the Bengals as well. But those are all really good names. And then the running back too. Like the Bears are not going to sniff that unless they pull a surprise party and they are interested in moving up to get a running back. Love Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, yeah.
Notre Dame, and he looks like he is going to be a top 5 pick. Probably surprised if he gets past the Giants at number 5. Although the Giants, they might go for your guy, old Sonny Styles as well. But those are all really fun prospects to talk about.
No question, and we won't be talking about them past Thursday night.
No, we will not be. No, that'll be that. They will be on other teams that are not the Chicago Bears. This is interesting. Our number 4 thing that everybody needs to know, we have here I love this, that we have the last 10 players selected at number 25 overall. And we can talk about the biggest home run and the biggest whiff of all of these guys. Do we start with 2025 and go back, Dan, or do we want to start with 2016? Because I see a former Bear is at number 20.
Yeah, well, let's do that because there's a former Bear in 2016. Let me take the cold tub time machine all the way back there.
Yeah,
and I'll just list these in sequential order.
Okay,
and you'll sit like an interested observer, and then we'll discuss the comprehensive takeaways of this list. 2016, the 25th overall pick in the NFL draft was a cornerback named Artie Burns to the Pittsburgh Steelers, as you mentioned. Wound up with the Bears later in his career, didn't have a long stay here, had some injury problems, etc. 2017, Jabril Peppers, a safety, goes to the Cleveland Browns. 2018, Hayden Hurst, tight end to the Ravens. 2019, the Ravens again. Hollywood Brown, wide receiver. 2020, another wide receiver, but he goes to San Francisco. Brandon Ayuk. 2021, Jacksonville selects running back Travis Etienne. Etienne. We're back in Baltimore in 2022 with center Tyler Linderbaum. That's 3 Ravens picks at number 25. They clearly wound up in that spot a lot in their existence. 2023, tight end Dalton Kincaid goes to the Bills. 2024, Jordan Morgan, offensive lineman to the Green Bay Packers. Last year, quarterback Jackson Dart to the New York Giants. Mark Grote, your overall takeaways of what that list of the past 10 players selected at number 25 tells you.
Yeah, there's some meh in there, with all due respect to old Artie Burns, but there are also some standout guys. I mean, I guess I did not realize that Tyler Linderbaum, who was a very popular player in the offseason, the Bears had stared down and said they don't want to pay $25 million a year for, but to see Tyler Linderbaum in there, Brandon Ayuk, obviously, the wide receiver. So you got a couple of hits in there. The jury's still out, I think, on Jackson Dart, the quarterback of the Giants. But it feels like kind of like what we've been talking about with number 25, Dan, that it's just kind of no man's land, and there are hits and there are misses in that area.
Yeah, it's a reminder of what the draft is, and it's a reminder of what the draft is at that stage. Etienne has been very productive in Jacksonville for a long time. Hasn't been an all-pro caliber running back, but a guy that I think they would say, yeah, we got a lot out of him. And so then you look at that, and then you see a Jabril Peppers who came out with a lot of questions about what he was going to do at the next level after a standout career at Michigan and never really realized the potential that some thought were there. It's a lot. And so, we had the discussion last week about the menu of players available to the Bears, and you were trying to lean towards that good night's sleep more than the adrenaline rush, right? Like you just wanted to feel like, oh, I got something safe and solid. This list kind of tells you safe and solid will feel like a nice victory 5, 6, 7 years from now.
Absolutely. And we've talked about it a lot, about the gray area, and maybe that's part of why you and I, at least in the first, or at least in the live TTN edition we did, you and I were very comfortable in taking a safety at number 25 overall. Let's move on to number 5, Dan. And yeah, I definitely want to know what you're thinking about here in terms of what the Bears should expect to get out of each of these rounds, round 1 and then 2 and 3 and 4 and on to 7. What do you have here for us, Dan?
So this is something I started putting together when I was covering the Vikings in Minnesota way back in the day, and it's evolved. And now that I'm at the Athletic and I'm able to enlist more people on my team around the league to reach out to their contacts and front offices around the league, we've made some even further amendments. And what I'm going to give you is something called the rubric. And we're calling it the rubric because Kevin Fishbane and I are starting a project at the Athletic where we're going to evaluate the success of Bears draft classes 4 years after they're made, right? So you get beyond the rookie contracts of almost everybody selected, and you start to evaluate that. In order to do so, you've got to understand what people in the league think qualify as hits at various stages of the draft. So that's what I'm going to read you right now. And it's a good framework to have. And we'll have this in a story this week at the Athletic that you can screen grab on your phone, and you can have it every draft year and say, oh, okay, this is what they're looking for at this part of the draft. Round 1, top 10. Doesn't apply to the Bears just this year, but if you're picking in the top 10, in order to have a draft hit, you're looking for early productivity, a long-term starter, an undeniable impact player. The best case scenario, multiple Pro Bowls or all-pro selections. So that's that top of the draft, that top shelf, those players we talked about just a few minutes ago. That's what those teams are looking to get out of those players. Picks 11 through 32 in round 1. You're looking for an immediate starter, significant production for a half decade or longer. That's that number 25 pick that we're just discussing. We move on to day 2, rounds 2 and 3 picks. We've massaged just a little bit from my original evaluator definition of what this is, but rounds 2 and 3, the Bears will have 3 total picks in that segment of the draft this year. They want immediate contributors, hopeful starters by the end of the rookie season, ideally building block guys with significant production. Okay. So this is where, like, if you go back through Bears history and you find some of these day 2 misses, you go, whoa, like they haven't just missed, they've missed badly. And we'll go through some of the names a little bit later on. I'm like, whoa. And then round 4, 5, 6, 7. Round 4 is a longer runway for emerging. You want an eventual contributor. You want a guy who can make your 53-man roster across multiple seasons. And you want somebody who can hopefully break through at some point as a key contributor with proper development. That makes sense. Now we start getting into no man's land in rounds 5 through 7. Rounds 5 and 6 meets an obvious team need, reliable depth piece with developmental potential, valuable special teams contributor, or fills a specific role or niche. Think kickers, punters, or return specialists in that. And then round 7, you're just looking for anything at all.
Yeah.
If you find somebody that can give you anything at all, you've won round 7, because that's just the part of the draft that's like, all right, whatever, we'll roll the dice and see what we get out of that. But hopefully that helps our audience understand a little bit more how people in the league sort of gauge their own success at these various stages of the draft.
Well, and if you look at that as it pertains to last year's draft, the scale that you just gave us, I mean, you did have like the Kyle Manun guy in the 7th round. So what a huge, massive bonus that was. Obviously, Colston Loveland became a massive contributor and an incredibly important part of the Bears, maybe their most important pass catcher. You had Luther Burden and Ozzie Trapillo both developing like a second rounder should, to the point where by the end of the season, especially with Burden, you're like, oh boy, what's the next step for this guy? Jury's still out on Shamar Turner because he was hurt. Jury's still out on Zay Frazier because of personal issues. And hey, hell, you got something out of Luke Newman last year for that matter anyway. So they're like, based on the criterion that you're giving, very successful and in line with that last year.
2 quick footnotes here. We are going deep on the 2022 draft class at the Athletic this week. The Bears, obviously, that was Ryan Poles' first class as a GM. And again, we're 4 years beyond that. So check that out at the Athletic. You'll get a full comprehensive evaluation of what the Bears did 4 years ago. And the other thing that I'd point out is that, most front offices sort of see the demands on days 1 and 2 as being much heavier, and you weight the success of your drafts on what you do on those 2 days. And then day 3 is kind of a tack on, a throw in, where you feel like you're in sort of lottery, scratch off lottery ticket area, right? And like if you scratch something off and you get a prize, you run to the 7-Eleven and you cash it in. If you don't, you just throw it in a stack and, in your junk drawer. And later you go, did this win? I better recheck this. And no, it didn't win. It still lost.
Yeah. All right. On to number 6. How can we characterize the opportunity the Bears have with that collection of 4 picks in the top 90? And what position group would you feel most anxious waiting on?
So I'm going to start with the second part of that question first and say offensive tackle. I think you and I are both in agreement that with these 4 picks, like, you want to go to bed on Friday night and wake up Saturday morning feeling like, okay, we've gotten better. You and I have talked a lot about, are the Bears better than they were when they played their last game in January against the Rams? And the answer has been no. Well, you want that answer to change a little bit when this weekend ends and be like, oh, they're better now. They've filled some obvious holes with some obvious impact prospects, right? And you can go down that route. Offensive tackle is such an interesting position this year, talking to people around the league, because the sentiment is essentially, if you want one, you better get one in round one. And if you don't get one in round one, then good luck. And so I feel like if you're the Bears, you keep this on the consideration wheel, right? Like, if there's an offensive tackle we love at 25, we might just take it because we don't want to live with what we currently have constructed in our left tackle competition. If you miss out and those guys go in a run that doesn't sort of match up with where you're picking, well, now you've got to get yourself real comfortable with Braxton Jones versus Theo Benedict versus Jed Wills in a training camp competition for the ages. And so I don't know how you feel about that, but it does kind of change kind of the way you put on the glasses and look at that offensive tackle portion of the board going into Thursday night.
Yeah. If that is where you're going, I agree. You don't want to wait for that. I mean, we've talked about some of these top prospects or guys that might be available to the Bears at 25. We have talked so much about Caden Proctor, about Blake Miller out of Clemson, who started every single game in 4 seasons out at Clemson, but more of a right tackle.
Right.
We know that those parts can be changed and they can be coached to do other things. But just for the record, Caleb Lomu from Utah, 6'6", 313, and an absolute terrific year last year, legit pass protector. So those are some of the names too. I think that in answering the question of in what position group would you feel most anxious waiting on it, I'd probably, if they're interested in an offensive tackle, like I've made it pretty clear that with edge and defensive tackle, with where the Bears are picking, I'm comfortable unless they really think they know something. If a Caden McDonald or a Caleb Banks is there at 25 and the Bears are just like, we know something, we feel something, go grab them. Otherwise, I'd be comfortable in waiting for those to drop to potentially the second round where some of those guys could pop up.
Yeah. And so look, like again, this does set up where people have to recognize that day one does marry with day two. They're going to be looking at that big board inside Haugh Hall upstairs and trying to figure out, okay, if we go here, what's available for us tomorrow? And that conversation has to be had a little bit as you're going through it. We always talk about best player available, but it's not best player available in a vacuum. You've got to understand how the rest of the board is shaping up and what that supply and demand looks like.
All right, number 8, as the draft bonanza rolls on here on Take the North, get ready for the P words. The P words.
Be careful with the P word.
Oh, man.
We had a whole episode about the C word.
Yeah, we did.
About 2 P words.
Yes, we did.
The C word is back, by the way. The Bears made the playoffs. They brought culture back to 1920 football drive. The C word is back. Culture, culture, culture.
Whoa.
Now we're giving you 2 P words for draft weekend, and we're giving you passion and play style, because I think you're going to hear this a lot throughout the weekend from Ryan Poles, from Jeff King, at the end of the weekend from Ben Johnson, about the things that they really prioritize in this draft class. And I think they're going to lean heavily into passion and play style with this class. Mark, what say you regarding the P words?
I am very excited about the P word. I've always been a big fan of the P word. I like the P word as much as I could possibly get the P word. You know what I'm saying? I love getting passion. I love getting play style. But no, I think that is spot on. We know a lot more about Ben Johnson and his coaching staff and the way they run things, and passion is going to matter. Play style is going to matter. Talent is still number one. But Ben Johnson, now that, he's starting to, year 2, starting to shape the roster the way he wants to, it's going to be very interesting to see what types of players come into the building, as if we didn't get a good idea of some of that last year already. And then there's the other part too, like which are the guys, and we've seen some of it already, that maybe Ben Johnson is not as crazy about. So I do think that, Dan, those are good and safe P words. Thank you for that.
One of the things that Ryan and Ben emphasized at the league meetings in the spring in Phoenix was that they really felt like their 2 staffs understood the language the other one was speaking, in terms of, okay, this is what we prioritized, not just in terms of the traits, but in terms of position specific needs. This is what we want this position to look like. And so they feel like going into year 2 working together, they're going to have much sharper clarity in terms of what they're attacking on this draft board. From there, we'll see what they accomplish this weekend.
I do love it. I do love the idea of the evolution of that working relationship between those two and trying to guess like whose pick was what and who had more influence in it. And you can even throw Dennis Allen into it to some degree. But we know that the big decision makers are Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson. Number 9 thing you need to know about the draft, and that is why I love this conversation, Dan. It is the edge rushers. It is a deep class. I'll give you the first crack at this, and I'll tell you like who I like as far as the edge rushers in this 2026 draft, which we know the Bears always need somebody else to get to, the quarterback.
We have become very familiar with a lot of these names because of the Bears' desire to add some teeth to the edge. And so I'm going to read you 4 day 1 possibilities that should be available for them at number 25 and a handful of day 2 options. And then you can decide what makes the most sense for you, what makes most sense for the Bears. So the day 1 possibilities include Akeem Mesidor, TJ Parker, Keldrick Falk, and Zion Young. Those are 4 names that have been linked to the Bears at various stages of the pre-draft process through various mocks and other things that are going on. Day 2 options could include Malachi Lawrence, and I say could because the runs are going to be very interesting to note with this very deep edge rusher class. Malachi Lawrence, Cassius Howell, R. Mason Thomas, Gabe Akis, and Dennis Sutton. And so do you have any preferences out of those guys? Anything you want to know more about any of those guys? I think I've got you pegged as a big Mesidor guy, don't I?
Oh my God, you're good, man. Is it like you're typecasting because of the Miami-ness that I was giving you earlier? Is that what's going on? How did you know?
It's just the unspoken chemistry we have with one another.
There it is. But yeah, no, I love Akeem Mesidor of Miami. He did have 12 and a half sacks last year with some of these edge rushers that are in the draft. You kind of got to look where are the sacks? Where are they? TJ Parker, where's all your sacks at? He had 5 sacks last year in 12 games. He did have, as long as we're talking about TJ Parker, 11 sacks back in 2024. But while I was loving on Bain, I was also loving on Akeem Mesidor watching Miami in the postseason. 6'3", 259. He does have the old short arm problem. So that is the dig on poor Akeem Mesidor and his little tiny short arms. But he is the guy that I like. Who do you like, Dan?
Remember, we did the short arm thing with Will Campbell last year.
Yeah, we did.
We were preparing for the Bears to go down that route. That guy acclimated himself quite nicely with his short arms as he went to the Super Bowl. Mesidor is, to me, it's one of these prospects that if they introduced him on Friday, I think Chicago would be like, okay, this is our guy, right? This is a dude he's relentless. The production in college is everywhere. It was consistent across his entire career. Ton of power, violent. Everybody talks about the motor and just how unrelenting he is with his play style and his passion, which meets up with what we just talked about. So Mesidor is right there of that day 1 group. That's where I would go personally if it's available. And if not, maybe you pivot to a different position, but worked a little bit with Jason Taylor, and so you get some Hall of Fame level tutelage from a guy who can show you how to use your gifts to be advantageous. And so that's certainly very appealing.
Do you know who else is an assistant in Miami? He is, I don't know if we talked about it on this podcast or not, but a former Bears offensive lineman by the name of Blake Brockermeyer is in this.
Whose son is in this draft, believe it or not.
That's right. That's why he was coaching in Miami.
We've got plenty of connections there. And then, Olin Kreutz's son in this draft or as a UDFA, which would be interesting to watch happen.
Yeah. And, Mesidor, again, one of those guys who one of the mock drafts I'm looking at right now, he is penciled in as 15th to the Miami Dolphins. So there's so much gray area when it comes to where these guys are going to be picked, but it would not be a shocker. I would guess he probably won't be available at 25, but I would not be shocked if Akeem Mesidor is available to the Bears at number 25. It's going to be fascinating to see which direction this draft goes. Let's stay on the line, Dan, and let's do the defensive tackles. I guess I'll go first on this one in terms of the guy that I like most. And I think I kind of gave it away during the live show the other night. And that is, I do like Caden McDonald quite a bit. I think that, look, the the Bears badly need people to stop the run still. Caden McDonald is considered the top defending defensive tackle in this draft. He does not get to the quarterback a ton, but I'll take a guy who can do the basics and do it better than anybody on a Bears team, which was 27th against the run last year, 6'2", 326, and I know he can develop when it comes to the pass rushing game.
Run defense has got to get better. I think there's no disputing that from any angle that you look at this thing. And so what you do up front is going to impact how much improvement you can make in a short amount of time. McDonald, obviously a big run stuffer. You got Peter Woods, who's he's got the penetration skill, a little twitch to him. That might be something you take a look at. Caleb Banks, interesting footnote on him, literally has had some injuries, played through a broken foot. I think he had surgery last September, came back and got hurt again. So he's got this like red flag on his injury report, but he's the guy that like gives you everything you need when he's playing. If he's healthy, I think you and I are in agreement that at 25, you can't really be taking those risks. You've just got to, if that guy falls to you at another part of the draft, you pounce on it, but you want a sure thing in round one if you can get it. And so that one's going to be really interesting to monitor for the Bears and other teams on Thursday night to see what happens with Caleb Banks.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at the list that we have up because I'll add another guy. Oh no, Lee Hunter is up there. Okay, I'm just looking at through our actual rundown.
Yeah, Lee Hunter, a day two guy, right? Like that could be there for you.
Yeah, Lee Hunter, Texas Tech, 6'4", 318. He is known as a 3 technique. So. Obviously a very good prospect. You talked about Peter Woods out of Clemson. The thing that stands out when I go through all the little synopsises from all of the draft experts, first step explosion is absolutely devastating for a man his size. And Peter Woods, the reason a lot of people, especially early on, were mocking Peter Woods to the Bears. He's got some scheme versatility to go. But my favorite out of that particular pack is indeed Caden McDonald out of Ohio State.
Don't lose sight of Christian Miller as a potential day two guy. If he falls far enough, he may not get all the way down to the Bears at 57, but that's another sturdy nose out of Georgia that might be able to help do some of the similar things that you were talking about with McDonald, just at a lower price point.
And that brings us to number 11, things you need to know about this draft. We got 20 of them, and then we got some bonus stuff at the end of this podcast as well. But the two safeties who, at least in Chicago circles, these two guys have been talked about a ton, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren and Dylan Thieneman. They are two guys who sure feel like you're going to put those wherever they get drafted. And the boards are saying right now that Thieneman is going to get drafted before Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, but really both excellent prospects. McNeil-Warren a little bit more known for his physicality and his ability to stop the run. And I think Thieneman kind of just does it all, which is why he's slightly ahead of McNeil-Warren.
Yeah, the closer we get to the draft, the less it's likely it seems that Thieneman will be there at 25. That seemed more like a possibility a couple months ago. It seems like he will be off the board. My colleague at The Athletic, Alec Lewis, who covers the Vikings, has a heavy lean towards the Vikings, taking Dylan Thieneman as their Harrison Smith replacement in Brian Flores' defense. Keep an eye on that in the later portions of Thursday night. McNeil-Warren, Big Ant Heron described him as sort of like a transformer because of how big and physical and the way he moves. It's like one of those guys that like you could see Bears fans falling in love with a guy that's got that size, that type of power, and that type of strength to go in and be a presence on the back end. Thieneman seems like more of a chess piece that you could be a little bit more versatile with and disguise some things with. But again, if he's not there, I think this is part of the reason why you and I both agreed that at number 25, McNeil-Warren out of Toledo might be where the Bears ultimately wind up, just because of the various things he can do, given that he would be the third safety off the board in round one in all likelihood.
Yeah, and I'm starting to have my doubts that he's going to be available at that spot, just because like most of the mocks have him, later 20s and maybe available to the Bears, but it's not like we're the only ones who realize how talented this guy is at 6'3", 201 pounds, couple of picks, 5 pass breakups last year, 77 tackles, good against the run, scheme versatility, all of that kind of stuff. So we'll see if they're there. If not those two guys, I mean, the three obviously safeties when you add Caleb Downs into there as well, then you just don't force safety in the first round. I don't know, Dan, if you know of any other safeties that would be worthy of a first round pick. I don't think that there are. I think then you be patient and you try to find your safety later on in the draft if you can't get Emmanuel McNill-Warren.
I'm with you on that. And so you pivot to a different position and you feel comfortable with what the work on your draft board shows you.
All right. We move on to number 12. That would be left tackle in playing round 1. If so, who are you thinking about? Proctor, Freeling, Lomu?
Try it. Henacher. Henacher. I guess. I don't know. Max Henacher.
I had to do it today, and I had the spelling.
I pronounced it 5 different ways. So if he gets here, we'll sit down with him in the midway at Hallis Hall, and we'll say, Max, say it 3 times slow and then 3 times fast, and we'll be all over it.
We'll never screw it up again. Who you got?
Well, this goes back to the conversation we were having a few minutes ago about the round 1 left tackle situation and whether you want to pull the trigger there or if you want to live with that competition. Monroe Freeling, I'll give you a little interesting prospect notes to it. Everybody sees him as a developmental guy, not a lot of experience, big ideal NFL frame, but is still kind of learning how to play that position. He's a high school wrestler with a yoga teacher mom. That was a nice nugget that I thought I'd throw at you on Monroe Freeling, right? Like, because it tells you that's a guy who probably understands leverage, probably understands flexibility, and he can probably put those 2 things together as he figures out how to play that position at a more consistent level, making the jump up from the SEC to the NFL. Proctor, we've talked about for a couple months as this just massive dude that if you can get the most out of him with a coaching staff that is known for getting the most out of their guys, that might be a project you want to take on and say, like, come here and work with Dan Richard and Kyle Devan, plant yourself on the left side of our line and answer that question for us for a long time to come. How do you feel about those 2 guys in particular?
Yeah, well, Caden Proctor, first of all, the size is desirable, 6'7", 352, but I keep hearing that he gets beaten inside a little bit too often, and that, is he somebody that will hold up at the end for 4 quarters going up against some of the top and most athletic edges in the league? And there seems to be, from a lot of the people that I've been studying, including our old friend Mike Tice, who is a little bit moving off of Caden Proctor, a little bit worried about his ability to stop some of the elite pass rushers in this league. So I don't know, man. Like, I feel like this is one of those times, Dan, where we haven't been able to say this in a while. I kind of trust the coaching staff. Like, if Dan Rochar is like in the ear of Ben Johnson and subsequently Ryan Poles, and he's like, oh yeah, give me this guy. I could work with this guy. I see the red flag. So I'm kind of like, if they take him, I'm not going to be mad, because that would mean that there's somebody in that building that thinks that there is something there, but I am not completely positive of it. Another guy that I'm kind of intrigued by, I think we talked a little bit about Blake Miller. He's more of a right tackle. And then Caleb Lomu as well, out of Utah, 6'6", 313, known as a legit pass protector, which always sounds good as your left tackle. So nobody, I don't know that there's anybody of the guys that we have up there that you talked about, that I just talked about, where I'm just like, oh yeah, slam dunk, to grab this guy at number 25 overall, to be honest with you.
And instead of saying Henacher, I'm going to say the kid from Arizona State, which replies to Henacher. The interesting notes on him, he came over from Nigeria. He played at East LA Community College, didn't take up football immediately when he got here. So this is a guy that, like, you're trying to figure out whether he can play football on the highest level just a few years into him playing football. Like, he was a basketball player and a soccer player when he first got over here. And then there were some folks that said, brother, you look like you could play some football. Like, let's get some pads and a helmet on you and see what it looks like. And he's clearly made the most of it. You see him get off the bus. He's big, athletical, big, physical, athletic, and you say maybe there's something to work with. I just think the Bears, if they're going to go and roll the dice there, they're going to probably look for somebody that's a little more proven than that at this stage. But certainly a name that you'll hear a lot on either Thursday or Friday, and try to figure out what exactly he does at the next level.
We move on to number 13, and on the old rundown, we have quarterback contracts.
Let me blow through this one for you, because this one's fast. It's just check. Like, you set yourself up for draft weekend by trying to, we all do the Bears needs and their low needs. And then you're like, okay, well, what does it look like next year? And what does it look like into the future? And you look at the depth chart and you go, wait a second, QB1, solid. QB2, solid. QB3, solid. So you got Caleb, you got Tyson, you got Case Keenum. Those guys are all under contract through 2027 together. And so now you feel like that room doesn't need to be touched. It's like an annual conversation. Should the Bears draft a developmental quarterback just for the sake of doing it and trying to bring somebody along? This year, you look at that quarterback depth chart and you go, nobody's even talking about the quarterback room on draft weekend. You just let it sit and you figure out the rest of your team.
That's what a feeling that is, man. What a wild thing. Like there is no, like I remember there's a little bit of consternation over when Caleb first got here 2 years ago. Do they really like, is Tyson Bagent the ideal backup? Do they not want somebody who can kind of watch over him a little bit? But now you've got that. You've got a guy in Tyson Bagent who's just ready to step in and show the world that he's one of the best quarterback, or that he's worthy of a starting gig. And then Case Keenum, like that is what you call an adult in the room. It's kind of like, hey, if you need me, I got you. And that's a guy that still wants to be here, still wants to play, but he's accepted the mentor role. So I'm glad you put that in here, Dan, because that is nice when you take a deep breath and you look at it and say, holy cow, I literally don't remember the last time I was completely comfortable with a Bears depth chart of quarterbacks.
It's incredible because you've got a potential star in Caleb. You've got this fun prospect to continue developing in Tyson. And then you've got this coach in Cleats who's more than happy with his role in Case Keenum. And so the security that they have for Ben Johnson to work with is great. And it allows you to look at every other position on your offense and say, what do we need to do there?
Yep. All right. Number 14. Let's do the state of the Bears wide receiver core. And we've kind of alluded to it. When you say wide receiver core, just wide receivers or pass catchers? Do you throw like?
Let's do both. Let's do wide receivers and pass catchers, because I think Loveland is a part of the discussion, right?
Yeah, let's do that this year. We're talking pass catchers, ladies and gentlemen, and hit it on a little bit. And the truth of the matter is that as we sit here, the Bears wide receiving room is not as good right now as it was last year, because DJ Moore is not in that room. Am I expecting Luther Burden to be as good? Yeah, maybe even better. Same thing with Colston Loveland, who was terrific last year. Roma Dunze had issues last year, but at this moment, I think you need another legitimate wide receiver on that team. I mean, obviously, you went out and you got Khalif Raymond as well. That's a nice player, but he's not going to replace DJ Moore. That's not what he is here for. So I think that you still need some work and probably could afford to add a wide receiver in the draft.
Yeah, look, like you've subtracted DJ Moore and you've subtracted Olamide Zaccheaus, and essentially you've filled those spots in right now with Khalif Raymond in the Zaccheaus role and with Jade Walker in the DJ Moore role. And so now you got to figure out what else needs to be done to enhance the depth, the competition, to get yourself playing at a championship level. It'll be very interesting to see if the Bears choose to address this via the draft, if they're comfortable with what they've got. It's an interesting wide receiver class. Loveland, I think, changes the calculus of all of it just because of the way he became Caleb's go-to guy in December and January. And you feel like, okay, like, got to have at moments. You've got a tight end that presents as a chess piece. And, I go back to that 2-point conversion in the playoff game where you're just like, man, you created a matchup as an offensive mastermind in Ben Johnson. And then you just told Colston, just go win that. And Caleb's going to throw you the football and we're going to have 2 more points on the scoreboard. And you feel great about that. And so that does, I think it diminishes any concern you have about DJ's absence, because you realize that tight end group is very, very capable of helping you in the passing game. And Colston in particular it seems like he's on the escalator.
Yeah, and I'm here for the potential improvement of Jade Walker. I know it's a very popular player with a lot of our listeners, and everybody loves the guy that was on the bench for the whole year, then made some big time catches. But I don't know how you feel, Dan, but at this very moment, he's got to show a whole hell of a lot more for me to think and believe that he's going to be a constant threat for 17 games this season if he gets that opportunity.
17 games and then 17 more the next year and then 17 more beyond that, right? Like,
yeah.
That's what you're looking for, is you're looking for guys that you can get the pen out and write them on your depth chart and feel really good about what that looks like. And so, look, like that's not to discount Jade's potential and his opportunity to seize a moment here, but it does sort of remind you that they might want to look into this receiver class, try to find some guys that fit, and see what Ben Johnson thinks of them, right?
Yeah. Well, then that brings us right to number 15. And the question is for you and for everybody listening here, what if a portion of the program, what if portion of the program, what if the Bears took a receiver on Friday night, which is, by the way, that is day 2 of the draft. I would not, I don't think I'd have a problem with it, honestly. I mean, I know they did this last year and it was a surprise, but it was also a surprise success. So I would not have an issue with it, man, especially with 2 of those second round picks.
It's really interesting. And so this is the first of 3 what if hypotheticals that we're throwing out here for our audience to consider, for you and I to consider together. And so what if the Bears took a receiver on Friday night? I think there probably would be a little bit of social media backlash being like, you don't need that. Where's my space eating nose tackle? I need an edge rusher now. And then people will be calling in and they'll be
was that your Fozzie Bear impersonation right there?
Well, Fozzie's a big day after draft caller to the Score, and to take the North voicemail. So, so expect to hear from him if that does happen. But look, like that it's the question. I give you a handful of names that could be available to you at 57 or 60. Jeremy Bernard, more on him in a later portion of the program, out of Alabama. Chris Bell from Louisville. Malachi Fields, who you and I talked about a little bit during the Take the North Live episode last week. Ted Hurst from Georgia State. Chris Brazell of Tennessee. There's some guys that you look into their production, you look into their scouting reports, and you're like, man, I wouldn't object if Ben added a toy to his passing game and decided to figure out how to slot that in.
I like those names. And then there's a couple of names too that I'm curious about wide receiver wise that I think probably are late first rounders, but no guarantee. Casey Concepcion of Texas A&M, he is projected late first, but like I said, when guys are projected late first, that a lot of times means second round. And then Denzel Boston out of Washington as well. I'm going to be keeping my eyes on those 2 guys to see if they drop, because I think that would increase the thirst for Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson to snag one of those guys in the second round.
Well, and you offered a scenario last week where the Bears didn't sit there and stay put at 57. They got aggressive and they moved up and they found a guy. And so like we have to consider that, that could be in play for them in every single round of this draft if they're truly enamored with a prospect. I don't know if they would feel comfortable doing a big leap for a receiver, but weird things happen and the board moves in mysterious ways. And every year something happens where you go, whoa, I didn't expect that. So something to keep an eye on. Are you ready for what? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and this will lead us into the next one perfectly, Dan, just to let people know what you're talking about. In my mock draft that we did in the Take the North Live episode, I did have the Bears trading up in the second round from 57 to 36 with the Raiders, and there he was still hanging out in the draft. Defensive tackle out of Ohio State, Caden McDonald, was available to the Bears, which brings us to the question of trades, and not an exact parallel here, but Dan, what if the Bears don't pick it all in round 1? Dun, 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 dun.
This is a scenario, Mark Grote, that has me thrown off, but it came on the radar about 10 days ago where people started trying to figure out where Ty Simpson was going to go. This is an inexperienced quarterback who seems to have some tape that's really intriguing. We know how quarterback needy this league is. We know how relatively weak this quarterback draft class is. And so if there's a couple teams that fall head over heels for Ty Simpson, they may not want to wait too long. And so if the Bears are sitting at 25 and there's a team, maybe it's the Arizona Cardinals, maybe it's the New York Jets, maybe it's a team like the Los Angeles Rams who decides we got to start planning for our future beyond Matthew Stafford. If a team wants to go get a quarterback and they start making calls, there's a possibility that call could ring in the draft room at Halas Hall. If that's the case, would you be comfortable with the Bears trading out of 25, adding another selection to their draft wallet, but missing out on the entire day 1 event to move back into the early portion of day 2? What if that scenario presented itself?
I would do it. I would do it. I fear the first round. I really do. Like, Yeah, I fear number 25, and that's why I've been making the safe pick, pardon the pun, in going for a safety. And do the Bears? Yeah. Does that mean the Bears are going to miss out on Emmanuel McNeil-Warren? Yeah, probably. But you can find other potential starting safeties throughout the draft, maybe not as talented and dynamic as either Thieneman or Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. But Dan, yeah, I mean, I have not been calling for the Bears to, like, I'd probably, if I could hit the button, I would say probably no, don't do it. But I would not, like, if they do it and they add another second round pick, they have 3 second round picks, if that's what it takes, then I would be okay with it.
This was a nice variation on the texters that say, or the tweeters that say, they need to trade down. And you go, well, you need a partner to trade down. Well, we presented an opportunity here where there might be a partner to trade down with. And it's a weird scenario. It feels weird to sit out all of night one when we've been preparing for the 25th pick for like 3.5 months. But if that's what helps your football team get better, it's there. All right, I'm giving you one more what if, and we sort of touched on this a little bit last week at Take the North Live. But what if the Bears went cornerback in round 1? This is a position we haven't talked anything about, in big part because we feel like they've got Jalen Johnson, they've got Kyler Gordon, they've still got Tariq Stevenson around, Terrell Smith, Zay Frazier on the roster. It doesn't feel like a need. Then again, it's a premier position. What if the Bears took a corner in round 1 of the draft?
I'd be like, good move, honestly, because, like we talked about with Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon, I don't, until I see Jalen Johnson back on that practice field, probably in camp, and he looks like Jalen Johnson, then I'll take a sigh of relief and I'll be like, okay, he's back, he's fine, he's good to go. He is getting older, he is expensive. That is Jalen Johnson. You're not going to have him forever. So the idea of drafting a corner is not a big deal to me. Kyler Gordon, love Kyler Gordon. He got paid. He's injury prone. He just is. He's not on the field enough. And maybe this year will be the revelation for him. Maybe he'll play 17 games and he'll go to the Pro Bowl this year. Jury's still out on Tariq Stevenson. You talk about an up and down player. Jury's out on Terrell Smith. We have no idea what Zay Frazier is possible, what the possibilities are for him. So yeah, premium position. If you can get another cornerback to add to the mix and to just start with Jalen Johnson, then I'm down with it.
It's not a great corner class, and so you're trying to find holes where they might be able to pick it. And so you, again, because it's not a good class, people might start making a run on other positions. You get the edge rusher run, you get the offensive tackle run, and then you're like, wait a second, at 25, the corner run hasn't started yet because it's not a great year for it, and people have gone in different directions. And so, look, there's a few guys in this draft, Keontae Scott out of Miami and Avian Terrell, who are probably more inside slot corner type players. Chris Johnson out of San Diego State, a tough, aggressive guy, probably too rich at 25, but a guy to keep an eye on. It's interesting because I don't know what the future of this cornerback group looks like with the defense that Dennis Allen wants to play, and they don't know. And listening to Ben Johnson in Phoenix saying, like, I really wanted to learn more about what I had in Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon last year, but they were both hurt for almost the entire year. And so it was really hard to know what we had. And so that question mark came up recently, and I was like, man, that's really an interesting conundrum. I don't expect the Bears to go corner as the headliner of their class, but who knows? Yeah. Things happen. That's why we present it.
Absolutely. They sure as hell ain't telling us everything or leaking everything out of Hallis Hall. So who knows what they're zeroing in on? I do know this. We have reached number 18, ladies and gentlemen, of things you need to know about this draft. And Dan, talk to me. How bad do the Bears need an impact disruptor for the top of their D?
Yeah. So this came up on the Mully and Haugh show last week, and David thought that this was an inroad along with another term that I'll give you in a minute, for us to begin assembling a Take the North glossary. So Adam Studzinski is going to have some homework to do. Impact disruptor applies to this draft because they asked me, do the Bears need an edge? Do they need a defensive tackle? Which one do you want more? And my answer is you just need an impact disruptor for your defensive front. Like, by the time you get to the end of Friday night, somebody in that draft class has to be an impact disruptor up front, somebody that makes an impact and disrupts. So add that to your list. Impact disruptor to your glossary. Here's another term that came up on that very same conversation. Context asterisk. David he was very tickled by this one because Mully was talking about how the Bears really haven't used premium draft capital on pass rushers over time. And really, Leonard Floyd is the one example over the last decade where you're like, it's probably the only example where they've gone after a pass rusher. Yeah. I put the context asterisk on there, Grote, and saying, well, they did use 2 first-round picks on Khalil Mack. Okay, like they traded him away because they felt like they needed an edge rusher so bad because Dice Roll and Leonard Floyd didn't exactly provide the return on investment they thought it would. So that was a context asterisk. So studs can add that to the glossary. Here, a couple other terms that we've talked about here this offseason. We've had EBD, evaluation by desire. We've had PDA, performance disguised as analysis. And then, of course, any Take the North glossary has to include an in-depth discussion of runners' balls, because that's what Ben Johnson needs more of from Caleb Williams. More runners' balls.
I love it. I love it. The glossary is being built here on Take the North. Man, we have just taken this podcast to new heights, and I love it. But yeah, I agree with you too on the Bears needing an impact disruptor just in general. And that was the conversation we had on the Score on Monday about Dexter Lawrence, who ends up getting traded out of the New York Giants. And like that kind of presence, they're really hard to find, which is why I wish, and who knows, the Bears may have made a serious play for Dexter Lawrence, but I am all for overpaying for somebody like Dexter Lawrence, but then you have to pay even more and even more and even more. But I think that you roll the dice on that. But the Bears probably did not have the assets that they were looking for.
Yeah, and the spirited discussion we had looked like that. There was a big price tag on that, and there were 3 price tags on Dexter Lawrence. It was the draft capital you'd have to give up, which Cincinnati gave up a top 10 pick for. There was the contract that you'd have to take on immediately and add to your salary cap, and then there's the extension that Dexter Lawrence wants. And so trying to get those 3 things aligned and really figure out if your investment can be made with what you have to work with, it's difficult to do.
If you're interested, by the way, like we always, Dan talks about some of the great stuff that he's writing in The Athletic. Dan and I, we're alluding to the conversation that we had on the Score. If you go to the Odyssey app, Wiederer was it 1 o'clock you were on with us, right? 1 o'clock? Yeah, 1 o'clock.
I was today, yes.
1 o'clock, yes. On Monday on the Odyssey app, if you want to hear more about Dexter Lawrence and just some of the things that we were talking about on 104.3 The Score. But we move on to number 19 here, and that is the dance for the Bears at 57 and 60. Tell us more, Weedman.
In and out topic here for sure, but obviously the Bears have those 2 picks in the second round, and they're very close together. And we talked about this a little bit last year in the second round when they were bunched up there earlier in round 2, where you've got to understand who's picking between you. And right now it's the Niners at 58 and the Texans at 59. And so who you pick at 57 may hinge a little bit on what you expect to happen at 58 and 59, so that then you still have something available to you at 60. It's just a portion of the draft to keep an eye on Friday night, because it does create a little bit of, you need some agility, you need some foresight, you need some of those things that need to be present in a draft room to succeed, because you would hate to have a player you love go at 59 and you should have been like, we could have taken him at 57 and waited to take this guy at 60.
Right.
Small portion of the draft, but interesting nonetheless.
In years to come, right? You had your guy right there, and then you took fill in the blank. All right, I love this one. Number 20, Dan offers 5 highly intriguing names to watch for day 2. This is the stuff, Dan. Tell us what you have.
Well, last year, this topic on the pre-draft bonanza episode, Mark Grote gave you Luther Burden III. Okay, so this is a place where you're going to give you that. I'm giving you a long shot here. Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech. He is not going to be available when the Bears go on the clock at number 57.
So. Yeah.
Nobody in the league thinks he'll be available. But if you do simulations of drafts on these various online tools, Jacob Rodriguez is there more than he should be. And you're like, well, wait a second. What are these AI bots not understanding about what the league knows about Jacob Rodriguez? Very productive, very instinctive, very solid linebacker out of Texas Tech. He won't be there, but if he's there, you pounce all over that and you say, we will put him in our defense and live with the results. I talked earlier about Jeremy Bernard out of Alabama. I'm going to marry him up with Ted Hurst as 2 receivers that could be very intriguing in day 2. Bernard is particularly intriguing to me. I'm going to read you a little bit about him, just because he's been a guy that is so Ben Johnson-like, right? Like last year, Alabama threw him the football. They handed him the football a bunch. They let him throw a couple passes. He scored 9 touchdowns. He loves to block. We talk about no block, no rock. Like there's so much in this kid's video and game film that you say, man, that looks like a toy that Ben would love to utilize and play around with. He can line up outside. You can put him in the slot. You can put him in the backfield. It's just one of those weapons where you're like, is this a luxury pick? Maybe. But was Jahmyr Gibbs a luxury pick when the Lions took him a few years ago? Certainly. So if the offensive coordinator sees something he likes, he might want to pounce on that. What do you think about Jeremy Bernard before I get on to my others?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of sold me on it right there with some of the comps and some of the truths that are being sold right there. Like I said, man, they need somewhere along the line in this draft, no matter where it is, you need another wide receiver, and that guy would probably be as good as anybody.
All right, I'm going to give you a center from Florida here, consistently available for the Bears, either late in round 2 or in round 3. Jake Slaughter. I'll read you 5 descriptions of Jake Slaughter. You tell me what you don't like. 2-time All-American, intelligent, mature, passionate, consistent. What don't you like?
I don't know. It sounds like he's a little too smart to me, Dan. That's what it sounds like. Old Jake Slaughter.
Feels like a great fit for the Bears offense if you are indeed content on making Garrett Bradbury your bridge option at center and moving in a new direction beyond that. Could be a developmental prospect to take there. That's a good one. A few more names here. We've got D'Angelo Pons, small, undersized corner out of Indiana, but competitive as hell, right? Like probably doesn't fit the prototypical traits that Dennis Allen's looking for. Keep an eye on D'Angelo Pons and where he winds up. Safety AJ Halsey out of LSU. It really feels like he could be that complement to Kobe Bryant, a safety who can hit, strong, physical, 10 interceptions in college. He has ball skills. AJ Halsey could be a guy you're looking at there. And the last name I got for you is Derek Moore out of Michigan, defensive end, strong, physical, one of these guys that's violent, plays hard, probably not going to create a ton of buzz on draft weekend, but maybe one of those guys that 3 or 4 years down the road, you go, how did we miss on Derek Moore? He's just, he put the, solid and really good and the type of player that you can win with.
Couple things to wrap up this particular segment. I did see on a draft site called Draft Buzz, where one of the sites that I trust in terms of the scouting reports that they give out, that particular website did have Jacob Rodriguez going in the 2nd round. Now, do I think he's going to be a 2nd round guy? Probably not, but there is life. And then I would just offer one other name because he was part of my mock draft. You talked about Jake Slaughter, the center. You say Slaughter. I say Logan Jones, the center out of Iowa. Again, with Garrett Bradbury being in a 1-year contract. And it's possible that the Bears love Bradbury and in the middle of the season they offer him an extra 2 years to his contract. Who knows what's happened? But the reason I like Logan Jones is because he started 51 games at Iowa at the center position. So no funny stuff. He knows the position. He knows it very well.
Experience pays off for sure.
Yes. All right. I see we're up to 20. I think we've done the 20 questions and now
we're in the home stretch.
Yeah.
We're in the home stretch. I got 5 more for you and we're going to go quick. And this one, Grote, was an exercise we did last year. Okay. This is last year we put together 5 gift baskets. It's the silent auction portion of the pre-draft bonanza.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm going to give you 3 different packages of players, 4 players that the Bears will take on days 1 and 2. And you're going to tell me which one you would be most excited to bid on. Now, the rules for this was I used ESPN Simulator to go through this. And the rule for me was I had to choose a different position with the number 25 pick each time. Okay, so you're going to start one with a safety, one with an edge, one with an offensive tackle. And I'm going to give you these 4 potential top 4 picks for the Bears, and you're going to tell me which one you like the most. Gift basket A starts off with edge rusher Zion Young. It moves on to linebacker Jacob Rodriguez. Tight end Mex Claire is in there, and safety Bud Clark. Do not respond yet because gift basket B right over here on this other adjacent table next to the sangria.
Lovely. Oh, that is lovely.
And the spanakopita that they're handing out here at the silent auction. You've got Emmanuel McNeil Warren as your safety. You go into day 2 and you get a guy to fold you in Malachi Lawrence. edge rusher, defensive tackle Xavier Harris, and wide receiver Ted Hurst. That's gift basket B. Ooh, if you might be intrigued by that, may I interest you in gift basket C?
Oh,
which
my
starts with
goodness.
offensive tackle Caleb Lomu, safety AJ Halsey, cornerback Keontae Scott, safety Jake Slaughter. Which one are you bidding on?
I got to tell you, like throughout this podcast and even today, we talked about Jacob Rodriguez on the score. Like I'm starting to fall in love with Jacob Rodriguez, and maybe it's just like Bears linebacker history. But Dan, I'm taking gift basket B because I love Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. We found out today that I love some Malachi Lawrence as well at the edge spot, and they need a receiver somewhere along the line. So with Ted Hurst is what you have in that second gift basket. So I am going to go with B.
I like it. I like the selection. This is an exercise that the audience can play at home. Hopefully they are able to visualize what we just laid out for them all the way down to the glasses of sangria on the table at the
Do you have one? Do you have one that you'd like to choose, Dan, out of your three gift baskets?
I think I would also probably go with B, to be honest with you, because I think Malachi Lawrence is a very intriguing edge rushing prospect, and there's a lot to like in that basket. So we're in agreement there.
Okay. 22. What you got for us here as we're kind of into the bonus rounds and the final rounds here of our draft bonanza?
Okay, so I did mention earlier that at The Athletic, Kevin Fishman and I are doing a deep dive dissecting the class of 2022 draft class that the Bears put together in order to kind of go through this at a level that made sense with how we evaluated that class. We went back and evaluated every single pick that was made under Phil Emery, every single pick that was made under Ryan Pace to sort of get a feel for how these draft classes come together. Now, remember, earlier in this episode, we told you how to examine what success means at various ranges of the draft. And so when we're doing these grades, you are grading the pick that was made more than the player that was taken, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's part of the exercise. And so in doing that, we wanted to see who were the day one and day two colossal whiffs. Okay. So I've got a few colossal whiffs for you here on days 1 and day 2. And then we'll talk about the 10 picks in that span that have received the highest grades. First, the biggest day one whiff since the Phil Emery era started. This was under Ryan Pace. It was his first ever draft pick. It was Kevin White. That was a tough one to swallow on day one. Okay. Shea McClellan, kind of on the border, probably classifies as a whiff, not quite as big as Kevin White. Day 2 whiffs over time. Velus Jones, that's part of Ryan Poles' first draft class. You don't take a receiver in the 3rd round and then cut him in October of his 3rd season with 12 career catches and feel good about it, right? Like that's a miss that stings a little bit. Other misses, total whiffs on that list: Adam Shaheen, Brandon Harden, Ego Ferguson, and then you get a little bit more to the side and you're talking about Will Sutton and Horonis Grasu. How do you feel about those whiffs?
The Kevin White thing, that was sports tragedy. You know what I mean? I think it was his last year, like 2018 with the Bears. Was he on? I think he was in that training camp, because that was the first camp I covered. And I remember it was sort of like last call for him that year, and he kind of looked good. And then it was just so sad to see it go. I was excited about Velus Jones Jr. when they drafted him. I didn't have a problem. I mean, everybody was wanting wide receivers earlier in that draft, if I recall correctly. That was Ryan Poles' first draft when he got Jaquan Brisker.
Velus was the 14th receiver off the board that year. So you waited, you took Gordon and Brisker, and then the 13 guys were gone, and then you took the wrong one.
Yep. Yeah. So people were pissed. I was sold on Velus Jones because he seemed like this, and I guess he was. I mean, this really mature, personable guy who seemed to be, fastidious in his work and all of that. I don't know if that turned out to be the case necessarily. So it just kind of sucked. I was bought in on baby Gronk, Adam Shaheen, a former 2nd round pick. Brandon Harden's problem. He was the safety, right? Brandon Harden. They have that right?
Yeah. Big physical safety who was just injured, if I remember correctly. Like he was, and I thought he was going to be good and gone as fast as he got here, right? Like just gone.
Yeah. And Ego Ferguson, just another in a long line of fails on the defensive line for Ego Ferguson. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm vulnerable to buying in because all these guys I kind of liked them when they drafted them, but they were no good.
All right. The range that we're talking about is 2012 to 2022. This currently registers as the 10 best picks that were made. And remember, we're talking about where they were made and what they got out of them. So it may surprise you to hear it, but then when you consider it, it makes total sense. The highest graded pick 2012 to 2022 is Charles Leno with a grade of 97. Again, that's a 7th round pick that became a starter at a premium position and earned a second contract with your franchise. Hard to get much better than that in round 7. So that's why Charles Leno gets there. The next tier includes Elijah Hicks, another 7th rounder who's been really good for them on special teams and as a fill-in safety. Eddie Jackson, Jordan Howard, 2 earlier day 3 picks that obviously contributed a lot. Eddie Jackson at the peak of his powers was as good as it gets in the league at safety and scoring touchdowns and taking the ball away and being such a big part of Vic Fangio's defenses. DeAndre Houston Carson, another guy, a late day 3 pick that gave you a lot over his time here. 5 more for you. Adrian Amos, that's a pace pick that was one of his better day 3 selections. Braxton Jones, still around, still kicking, day 3. Roquan Smith, the lone round wonder on this list as a guy who came in as a top 10 pick, delivered just about everything you asked him to deliver, obviously was traded. Kyler Gordon and Jalen Johnson also on that list. Anything surprise you there in hearing those names in terms of picks and understanding that we're grading them on where they were taken and what they ultimately gave?
Yeah, no, I mean, just commenting on some of them. I love the combination of Adrian Amos and Eddie Jackson until obviously Amos had to get out. They weren't going to pay 2 safeties, and he ends up in Green Bay. And Eddie Jackson, you could say the year 2018 is one of the best safety seasons that we have seen in Bears history. So for sure. And then I'm thinking about Charles Leno and how long it actually, he felt so expendable, but it took them a while to figure out what they were doing at left tackle when, remember, we all thought that it was going to be my guy. Why am I having a hard forgetting my Tevin Jenkins was going to be the left tackle. And then all of a sudden, here comes Braxton Jones, ladies and gentlemen, who is, of course, on your list. Roquan Smith, great. Kyler Gordon, great. Jalen Johnson, great as well.
So there you are. So, all right, we're moving down the list. We got 3 more items here before we end the bonanza, and we cannot get out of a Take the North pre-draft bonanza without talking about comp picks. Okay, so this is the comp pick segment of this podcast. Remember those? These are the ones the Bears didn't get.
Again.
Right? If they had been awarded the compensatory picks from the NFL, this year it would have come at pick number 101. So on Friday night, when the draft ends at pick number 100, everybody that was outraged about the compensatory pick decision has to go on social media or in the Take the North email, wherever they want to put it, on a billboard above the Kennedy Expressway. You have to tell us who you would have picked with the compensatory pick at the end of day 2, because we need to know just how important this compensatory pick really was. So that's my first part of the compensatory pick discussion.
I love it. I love that idea. Yeah, if this was so important, let's hear what you would have done with those picks. Hey, man. Hey, maybe they would have packaged them together to get Dexter Lawrence. Maybe that would have been part of the package if they had just gotten those compensatory picks.
One more compensatory picks nugget. There is only one JC2A resolution compensatory pick being used in this draft. It is currently owned by the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is at pick number 100. The Jaguars got it from Detroit, who got it from the league for developing Aaron Glenn into a head coach who would go on to be a head coach for the New York Jets. So that pick has changed hands. The Jaguars will make that pick at number 100. That precedes what Bears fans will do at 101, even though it doesn't exist in their wallet. They will tell us who they would have picked with that also elusive compensatory pick. And so that's an interesting footnote there, because the Lions ultimately traded that to Jacksonville when they moved up to draft receiver Isaac Tesla, Isaac Tesla. And so here we are. The compensatory pick discussion will not be closed until this time next year at the end of the 3rd round, and then we can finally put this whole thing to rest.
All right, and we'll see what it actually looks like when it's done completely correctly, or the NFL has dictated that it was done correctly in the Jets' hiring of Aaron Glenn. Here we are, Dan. We have gotten to 25. Closing thoughts. Here it's sort of like it's been a tough draft season, like we said, because of the the really fast change in the Bears going from top 10 to picking 25th. That doesn't mean I cannot wait for the draft, quite frankly, to see what the Bears come away with, considering how productive it was last year. New life for the team. We know there are many holes and spots that have to be filled. Let's see if they are able to do that this year.
Yeah, look, like there's a situation where you've got to make the most of what you've got, right? And so they're not picking in the top 10, but they do have draft capital to utilize. They should have an opportunity to bounce around the board at certain spots. It's going to be really fascinating to watch them go through this process and see what they come home with when we get to the end of Saturday night and we have that end of draft press conference, presumably with Ben and Ryan, whether they speak together or whether they speak separately. That's a storyline that we'll keep tabs on as well. And then we'll just see where they go from here. Because again, as we record this podcast, the current players are already back in the building. They're listening to Ben tell them, get your urgent asses in line and start making improvement today because 2025 is over and 2026 begins now. So they've got to respond to those demands. And certainly the front office and coaching staff has to do their part in improving the roster this weekend.
Last thing, unless you have anything else we should mention, because I know we talked about it on the score, but the Bears did pick up the 5th-year option of Darnell Wright, the 2023 first-round pick for the Bears. He was number 10 overall. So I guess that portends well for him and for the Bears, and as you said earlier, that the first step in potentially getting him a long-term extension with the Bears, which he feels like he is very close to having earned.
Was really impressed with the growth he showed from training camp through the end of the season, and particularly because it came with a significant injury where he's playing with that giant brace on his elbow and didn't have full power and still made those developmental leaps. It's good news for Darnell Wright. Obviously, you want to see more of that in 2026. The Bears will work through where they think his value is, and they'll try to start talking about Darnell Wright getting a second contract. And second contracts are a big deal for draft picks because they're not as frequent as some might think, and certainly not as frequent here in Chicago. So good for Darnell Wright. Let's see where it goes from here.
Amen, brother. Yeah, I think that's it. This has been another bonanza. Now, did you guys do bonanzas before I came here? Is this the second bonanza, or were there bonanzas pre-Grote and during the mighty David Haugh era of Take the North?
David did not have the patience for my bonanzas. So last year was the first.
Can I keep you rolling? Come on. Can I keep you rolling?
So we did it for the first time last year. This is the second of what we hope will be 30, I think, bonanzas.
I love that idea, man. I love that idea. We are taking this podcast in lots of fun directions. And just another big time thank you to the people that came out to our Take the North live episode. If you go to the episode previous to this one, the one you're listening to right now, you could check out the energy we had in that room, what we sound like when we've got a studio audience. So it means a lot that people took the time to do that. It means a lot that the score gave us the resources, and the Blue Cross Blue Shield studio gave us a little extra staff to put on a great show. But we like the direction that this podcast is going, and everybody that is listening and watching and that participates in this podcast, feedback we get, whether positive or negative, we really appreciate you helping us to grow this podcast. So if you can give us, how does it work? 4 stars, 5 stars, whatever it is, likes, all the clicking stuff that exists. We appreciate all of that, but mostly just love that you guys watch and that you guys listen to this podcast.
Very exciting night last week, and hopefully that excitement continues throughout the draft weekend and the off season and into training camp. Got a good thing going here, and part of that is because the audience continues to show up and show out, as they like to say.
Yeah, we love it. We love the fact that even during the offseason, we've been getting some pretty enormous numbers. So we owe a debt of gratitude to everybody listening and watching, and we'll continue to try to bring this podcast to new heights and hopefully give you the information that you need. And hopefully that was enough information for you, because that's an hour and 20 minutes worth of Take the North right there, ladies and gentlemen. And so for our guy, Dan Wiederer of The Athletic. Read The Athletic because he's got even more draft stuff. He and Kevin Fishbane do a great job. John Greenberg as well. So read Dan Wiederer in The Athletic. For our executive producer, Adam Studzinski, I am Mark Grote of The Score and Rahimi Harrison Grote saying thank you so much for listening and watching the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.